Welcome to another edition of TwinSpires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson, joined by James Scully and our special guest today, Darin Zoccali, to talk the events of this past weekend, including some big upsets at Saratoga, some harness racing at the Meadowlands, and we'll look ahead to the Haskell Stakes at Monmouth Park on Saturday. Happy to be back with you, James. I heard you had a really big weekend at Saratoga as well. Big winner with Think About It, and I think I got this correct, 10 of 18 winners.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And welcome to the roundtable, Darin. Just came back, I believe, was it Barbados?
Bahamas, but close.
Okay. Celebrating a big milestone birthday. And did you change up your hair?
Yeah, we turned the big 40. So it's all downhill from here. Barbados has been good. We hang out there for the Barbados Gold Cup. No racetracks in Nassau in the Bahamas, but they did have a nice sports book at the Bahamas, so we'll give them a plug. But I am back from the Caribbean, refreshed and ready to go for great summer racing up at the spa.
Awesome. Let's kick things off with the Diana at Saratoga. We had an Italian went off as the 1-5 favorite, faced 4 rivals, including 3 stablemates, and was ultimately beaten a nose by Whitebeam, the second longest shot in the field. What do you make of Whitebeam's upset in this race? Let's start with James.
I thought it was a big deal. Whitebeam wasn't making only our 3rd U.S. start. And while the turf did have some give to it, and she was getting 6 pounds from an Italian, a pretty big weight break, an Italian had everything her own way on the front end. And I look at this race moving forward as well. And the Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf being at 1.25 miles at Santa Anita, I just think Whitebeam might be Chad. It has a potential off of this Diana win to be Chad Brown's top contender for that race. Because in Italian finished second last year at 1 mile and 3/16 distance at Keeneland. She's going to have to go further, and I'm not sure 10 furlongs is a good fit for her. And like I said, Whitebeam was only making her 3rd U.S. start. She started at 1 mile. She won 1 mile and a 16th stake at Pimlico, and then won the Diana at 1 mile and an 1/8. And I think being by Caravaggio, she was a little bit pigeonholed as a sprint type in Europe last couple of seasons. Coming over here, I think it's really starting to show that she can get further, handle longer distances. I think 10 furlongs could be in her wheelhouse. And I thought it was a really sort of a breakthrough performance for her. Darin, what did you think?
Yeah, when Whitebeam came over after she won the Gallarette, I thought maybe she might be a horse for the Breeders' Cup Mile based on what she had been doing overseas and the fact that Chad Brown had an Italian here and looked to be his lock, stock, barrel type for the filly and mare turf. But now things have kind of changed because it looks like as the races get longer, Whitebeam certainly could get better. And like you said, with the filly and mare turf at 10 furlongs in Italian with that running style, certainly can question the additional ground for her because she did get collared late in the race last year as well. Whereas Whitebeam seems to get stronger the longer the race gets. And as she was coming out of a key race, that Gallarette Stakes produced 2 next out winners as well. So it's not like she had some kind of fluky form there. She looks to be potentially maybe the now filly and the now mare for the Chad Brown barn heading into the second half of the season. Going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. But one thing is for sure, the horse that we thought maybe had a chokehold on this division certainly seems maybe not the case anymore. And big surprise to another Chad Brown runner who might be taking the torch from her.
Yeah, Chad Brown even said that Whitebeam was training as good as his top handful of horses all winter. And so I guess it wasn't too much of a surprise. I mean, second longest shot in the field. So obviously the public wasn't looking at Whitebeam, but I think just a quarter length shy of being unbeaten in 3 starts since shipping to the U.S. So certainly a horse to keep an eye on. And let's move on to 2 other upsets that happened at Saratoga this weekend. So we had the Schuylerville Stakes with Becky's Joker at, I believe, 21-1. Winning in her first start. And then in the Sanford, we had Yo-Yo Candy at 46-1, upsetting Gold Sweep. Do you think either of these horses can make an impact going forward in the Spinaway or the Hopeful Stakes? Let's start with Darin.
I would be a little bit surprised. I mean, obviously, Gary Contessa doesn't normally win with debut runners. So to see him win with Becky's Joker debuting in a stake was certainly a bit of a surprise. Yo-Yo Candy in the Sanford, I think, was more rather about circumstance. Obviously, Gold Sweep, who was completely left at the gate and still almost was able to kind of reel in the front runners there, was probably the best still that day. Yo-Yo Candy was coming out of a race that was a bit on the slower side, which is why the horse was sent off at 46-1. Sometimes some strange things can happen up at Saratoga. Gary Contessa debuting a horse who got a great trip, did keep good pace with the competition that day, but you never really know how good these 2-year-old races at the start of the Saratoga meet are. And typically as we get towards the Hopeful and we get towards the Champagne, the Frisette and races like that, the cream kind of rises to the top. So James, even though they were able to get to the wire first on these two events, I'm not sold that either of these two are going to be prominent players in their respective divisions.
No, and I think those are great points. You never know about these races, and I'm a little bit skeptical about the quality of both fields in the Schuylerville and Sanford. I do give Becky's Joker a lot of credit for debuting in that race, Gary Contessa, and she won convincingly. But I thought the poke holes a little bit in the field. I thought the runner-up Saratoga Secret was like out of gas or in trouble at the top of the stretch, and she held for second. So not sure about the competition in there, but I do think she has more upside than Yo-Yo Candy. I agree about it, just a matter of circumstance. And one takeaway about that race is Gold Sweep. I think that Tremont was a little bit of a false performance on his part. Granted, he broke poorly, but I've seen him run now in three starts. He's won one of them. The horses that have beat him in the other two, I'm skeptical of, and I'm going to make him beat me moving forward at potentially short odds. So that was my main takeaway to fake Gold Sweep off of that troubled second place effort. Ashley.
Yeah, I would take Becky's Secret between the two, but of course, as Darin mentioned, you can't necessarily put a lot of weight in these 2-year-old races. I will say Becky's Secret's owner and Gary Contessa did pair up to win the Spinaway in 2018 with a 16-1 long shot. So we'll see if they can do it again. And I certainly think, Becky's Secret winning by more than 3 lengths, something to, hang your hat on, and we'll see how she does in the Spinaway. Let's move on to the Haskell. We have potentially Mage running against Habit Trice, though we may not see Mage depending on how her connections think she worked out this morning. So what do you all think about this race, how it's potentially setting up? What are your early thoughts, James?
I'm really hoping Mage runs. That'll give us 2 runners from that Derby field that are, have accomplished 3-year-olds with Tappa Trice and Mage. But just looking at the overall picture of the race, you're going to see, I believe, Arabian Night come back in this spot and be favored for Baffert, a 9-time winner. And he's going to have to earn it in his first start at 1 1/8, first race since late January, because a couple of these opponents look like they got quality and they have speed. I'll start with Extra Anejo. If he's not going head to head, I think he'll be prompting Arabian Night at some point. And I think Go Rocket Ride also has some early gas to put pressure on him, at least, before the latter stages. So I do think the race is going to, if Arabian Night wins it, he's going to earn it on the front end. And if he doesn't, the race could set up for somebody off the pace like Tappa Trice, maybe even a Mage. I'm a little bit skeptical of Mage until he proves it off the Derby. But it'll be interesting to watch that race because I know Arabian Night's going to have a lot of buzz in there. And if he does win it, it's going to be a big feather in his cap, I believe, Ashley.
What about you, Darin?
Yeah, Mage, I guess I hold him in a little bit higher regard. The Preakness, I feel like they came back in 2 weeks. And, when you listen to the quotes from Ramiro Restrepo, Gustavo Delgado Jr., it sounded like after the race, they said basically, we wouldn't have normally run him back in this spot. They almost felt compelled to have to do it, having the Derby winner. And he ran admirably well, getting a bit of a tough trip behind a rather slow pace that day. And I thought he ran just fine. I expect a huge bounce back from him if he does run in this race. And as we record this, we're still waiting for the decision. The horse worked 6 furlongs the other day, and all systems were go based on what the connection said he worked better than ever. So I'm not sure what the reason would be to not run him here. He does obviously add a great deal of star power, and I'm sure Monmouth is right now probably refreshing the Twitter page every few seconds to see if there's anything new on whether this horse is going to enter. Tappa Trice is kind of the interesting entry for me, because given his running style and the fact that he's kind of this lumbering horse that you have to ride from start to finish and has no early speed and gets left at the gate, that is not the profile of a horse you want in a Haskell going at Monmouth Park, which is typically a pretty quick surface that definitely plays kindly to speed. And I almost feel like Todd Pletcher is forced to run him here with Forte running in the Jim Dandy. It was either run him here or don't run him at all until the Travers. So I'm not real bullish on Tappa Trice in this particular race. There is a good deal of speed in it. Extra Anejo is a very interesting runner in here that's going to be going postward as well. We'll have to see how the past performances look when they all come together. But, make no mistake about it. When they go into this race, I do believe Mage is going to be the horse to beat because he does have a little bit more tactical speed and he has a little bit more versatility than Tapatrice, who, from a betting standpoint, is probably going to be the fade for me, Ashley.
Yeah, Tapatrice is a horse that every time I want to stand against him, he ends up winning in spite of bad starts. And then, of course, in the Derby, I played a couple exotics with him on top, and he ended up breaking out of the gate exactly as I hoped he wouldn't. So I am afraid to back him here. But there's another horse I'm interested in, which is Salute the Stars, a Brad Cox runner that started on turf and then ran at Churchill Downs 1 mile and 1/8 that was taken off the turf, had a huge jump in Brisnet speed ratings, and then came back and won the Pegasus. I like the late pace figures, so I'm intrigued to see how this horse runs in this race as well. Of course, has a little bit more to prove against some of these other horses that have
a troubled trip as well in that Pegasus, and he ran down Kingsbarn, who was loose on the lead. So that was a big effort for sure by Salute the Stars.
Well, I'd be remiss not to talk some harness racing since we have Darin here with us today. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a big weekend at Meadowlands. Let's start with Confederate winning the Meadowlands Pace. Give us some of your takeaways from this weekend.
Yeah, it's funny. When I worked at the Meadowlands, I was viewed as a thoroughbred guy working at a harness track, and people didn't think I knew what I was talking about. And now that I work more on the thoroughbred side of things, when there's something in harness racing, I get kind of looped into the conversation by default because of my time at the Meadowlands. It was a great night. The Meadowlands Pace Confederate, I thought, put forth one of the better performances that we've seen in the 47-year history of the race. He sat fourth early, made a first over move, which is a really tough move to make in harness racing. You really want to be covered up as much as possible in harness racing, sitting behind another horse, especially if you're in the outer flow, moving to the outside. Confederate did it all on his own, went first over, powered past the leader, opened up by 3 lengths. And for the last 16th of a mile, Tim Tetrick was basically just fist pumping his way to the wire, holding the lines in one hand, easily winning his 6th Meadowlands Pace, which makes him second on the all-time list, one behind John Campbell, who won 7. And I'm sure he'll probably win a few more before his career is over. But Confederate, Ashley, was absolutely spectacular. Headlined a great night, which was filled with upsets. Jiggy Jog was considered the best horse in training in harness racing, lost in the Hambletonian Maturity, getting collared right at the wire by MM's Dream, going the extra 1/8 of a mile. So certainly that could have played a part in her defeat. We saw Sylvia Hanover stall on the backstretch when trying to get to the front, take back, re-rally, go 3 wide, and somehow win in a miraculous performance. We saw Michaela win the Dorothy Houghton at 41-1, steamrolling past the favorites in the stretch, including Test of Faith and Grace Hill, a couple of the better pacing mares that we've seen in the last decade. And it was just, and then Charlie May, who won the William Houghton Memorial at 31-1, his first win of the year. Charlie May won the Meadowlands Pace a couple of years ago, was disqualified, now returns to the Meadowlands and pulls off the upset in the William Houghton as an older horse at 31-1. So it was a night to remember for the Meadowlands. They had their highest handle on a Meadowlands Pace night in 17 years. So great to see that for them. But spectacular card, and certainly a lot to look forward to coming up in 3 weeks for their big showcase of the summer with the Hambletonian Day, the first Saturday in August.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I don't follow harness racing. Do you have anything to add, James?
No, but I'm looking forward to that first Saturday in August. I thought Darin did a great job summarizing, and looks like we got some suspense ahead for that big racing night.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Darin, for joining us. I'm sure we'll be seeing you around for some future roundtables. And thanks again, as always, James. Be sure to check us out next week for another edition of the Roundtable, and we'll be back on Thursday for the jury as well. See you then.